We're Greg and Priscilla Hunt, and we have been married for nearly 46 years.
We've learned a lot. Speaking for self, I have learned a lot
And
in
I can
those
say so too.
46 years. Too many lessons to count. But one that stands out is teamwork is better than competition. And when we married, I was very competitive, and that translated into being competitive with Greg. And I'm still learning this lesson.
I was going to say, it's not like we erased that automatically.
Yeah, no, I didn't change. I'm still competitive. But one of the lessons is that it doesn't work very well in marriage. And so I'm working at setting competition aside and not bringing that into our relationship and constantly doing one-upsmanship.
You know, and I have to say too, it's not like you were the only one who had that competitive fire. So we had to manage that. And in fact, as I think about the question, what are some of my most significant relational insights or learnings in these years of our relationship, a lot of them were those foundational lessons from the first months and certainly years of our relationship, and somewhat connected with what you're talking about, because you're talking about learning how to collaborate, is that I had to make the shift from thinking of me, I, my, to thinking about we, the collective interest we had. Our marriage had interests, and my ability to think about our collective interests, the collaborative need of our relationship, and to even use the terms we, took a little doing to get used to actually saying that in collective terms. That was a big one. Since then, I do have to add some others that I've learned. I've come to appreciate more with every passing year that relationship is a moving target, that we can't ever just rest on all the gains from the past or the patterns that have been established, even including those kind of foundational practices that are sort of the basics of relationship. I'm still having to go back to those and rehearse them. And I'm also making adjustments still in light of us being at a different stage in our relationship, as it has to do with our kids, our grandkids, the work leisure mix, and then evolving circumstances related to health and energy, those things that have come into play.
Yeah, and you're saying that reminds me that we're still learning lessons. And it isn't like our first year or our first 5 years, we learned all this wisdom and all these lessons that now we're living out. I'm learning something new every day.
Yeah, and among them, not all of them, great positive things. Like I've come to terms with a tendency to be a little reactive, and I'm learning how to practice that kind of self-restraint, keep things in perspective, to be a more collaborative partner by being willing to absorb maybe uncomfortable things that you're sharing with me, and to own responsibility for things, to listen all the way through and not jump in, interfere, interrupt what you're doing. So these are lessons I'm still learning, to be sure.
Both of us. So one of the things that I learned about you that I didn't know is just how committed you are to loving me and expressing it lavishly and unconditionally.
46 years into the relationship.
Yeah.
That's a good thing to know.
Well, it is. And I mean, when we got married, I figured that it'd be like every other relationship I'd been in, and at some point it would suck. You know, I'd get tired of you, and you would just kind of sit on the couch and do whatever. I don't know what I expected, but I do know that what I have been wonderfully surprised about is just your tenacity of loving me and expressing it in really tangible, concrete ways.
Appreciate you saying that. I think about how my perceptions of you have deepened and broadened over the years. I was first attracted to you because you were a cute young thing, and you were vivacious, and you had that kind of Texas y'all friendliness that bubbled out of you. So I was immediately drawn to your vitality, and found that very appealing. As the years have gone by, I've come to more deeply appreciate your purposefulness, the level of your intensity and commitment to doing things and doing things right, your action-oriented way of life that's really wired into your DNA. And that is something I didn't anticipate that our relationship has benefited from in countless different ways. And it, in a sense, simply expands my appreciation for that vitality I saw at the outset. You are a life force, and I'm still drawing energy from all that life you exude.
One of the things that I wish I had known before we got married is that compromise isn't the ultimate goal.
Yeah, that's an important insight.
You mentioned the word collaboration a couple of times,
Right.
and that was something that we figured out, but it's kind of tied in with that competitive thing too, you know. But compromise, if I compromise, there's something I'm giving up. And I'm not thinking about, oh, this is wonderful now because we've compromised. Aren't we great? And isn't life wonderful? I'm thinking, I gave something up, you know? And so compromise isn't really all it's cracked up to be. I think that there's a higher level of relationship, and it is collaboration, being on the same team, being shoulder to shoulder, facing life, facing problems, living it again as a team, not as individuals who it's not a tug of war.
Yeah.
It's a true collaboration,
Yeah.
working together.
And you know, thinking about the difference between competition and then coming up with a compromise and then the ultimate of collaboration. The difference between compromise and collaboration doesn't always have to do with the end result, because the end result could be identical between the two. It's the process that leads to collaboration that changes everything. If I'm spending time listening to you for understanding with an empathetic, caring heart, then I'm going to find myself wanting for you what you want for yourself. And as you're doing the same for me, you're wanting for me what I want for myself and for us. And then when we're looking at alternatives, we're looking for win-wins. We're looking for ways that we can both get what's really important for us. And that, as you said, shoulder-to-shoulder mindset, so that we're now aimed in the same direction. We're partners rather than competitors. That's a huge one.
Yeah. It's powerful.
Yeah. I mentioned if I were to think about things that I wish I had learned in my first year of marriage, it would be communication skills and conflict resolution skills. I think our tenacious love for each other made a significant difference in how we weathered the adjustments of the early years of our relationship. But because we're both strong-willed people, there were some real fireworks in all of that, and we were imperfect with the way we were working our way through the problems between us. And there were habits. I had my own set of habits, and you had your own set of habits related to wiring and family history, those kinds of things, core issues coming into play that we had to overcome and that were unhelpful tendencies. Learning those communication skills and conflict resolution skills provided me a framework for being able to enter into significant issues and work through them collaboratively, again, to a mutually satisfying conclusion.
Yeah, totally. So if I were to give advice to another couple who's in our shoes at our stage of relationship, married for the long haul, I think it would be to keep growing and keep learning. As an individual, if I am growing and am remaining interesting, then our relationship is growing and remaining interesting. And I think about that I'm only as good as, I bring my best self to the relationship when I am interested in life and engaged in life. And you mentioned that vitality. That's when I'm at my best. And so I want to bring that to the relationship. And then the other piece of advice would be, don't wait to develop some really strong habits in your relationship, because at some point, the kids are going to be grown if you have kids. The dogs are going to, go to college or whatever dogs do at some point. If they're really the smart dogs get to go to college. Not all of them do, but
yeah, graduation from them is not a pretty picture.
Exactly. But at some point, you're going to be looking across the breakfast table at each other years down the road, and I want to make sure that at that point I know you.
Yeah, we're not strangers at that point.
Yeah. And I think that's where the growth comes in, the intentionality, the proactivity, the communication skills, the collaboration. I mean, it all comes together as a whole in the relationship that you create. And so my advice would be, don't wait to create that relationship. It's going to be an ongoing process. We're still learning and growing and figuring it out. But don't wait, because the longer you wait, the harder it's going to get. Because, those dogs, they're hard to, those old dogs are hard to teach new tricks.
Yeah, they are, especially when they're stuffed. And that's really valuable stuff. What I thought about was the importance. My advice has to do with the importance of getting past or misunderstanding the importance of the in-love feeling. Because I think a lot of relationships end up kind of hitting a wall when the relationship itself moves beyond the initial wonderful romantic phase.
The rose-colored glasses come off.
You can do no wrong, I can do no wrong, it's magical, it's full of fireworks or whatever, depending on the person's temperament. Because I think the really good stuff happens after that, when we wake up and see each other more clear-eyed, where we have to begin making adjustments, where we're learning to work collaboratively rather than competitively, and where we're sharing out of trust that grows from our core issues, things that are unresolved, and working together about those dynamics that are sometimes complicated dynamics. Because I would clearly say that the relationship we've established gets better all the time. The old song, I love you more today than yesterday, but not as much as tomorrow, is something that happens because we didn't waste time wondering if we were going to stay in the relationship or get out of the relationship. We could just move on into a mutual commitment to keep growing together, learning and growing and living and enjoying life. And it's really paid off.
It has. And I look forward to all the years ahead of us to continue to learn and grow and be as in love, whether or not we have the in love feeling, still being crazy about each other and expressing that to each other.
And that's a good point. I think there's a fear that if you lose that stage, the in love feeling stage, that romance gets taken out of the relationship. And I think it's really important to say that does not have to be the case. You can continue to cultivate that romance as a part of the rich relationship that's being nourished over time.
Yeah. So if you are at our stage of relationship, congratulations.